Good evening. Welcome to the lineup. I'm Rick Goff, your host for tonight. I'm joined by Aaron Smith, and we have got a flurry of things to talk about this evening. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we have our top plays for the month of March that are still going on. We got a few more days for those submissions to get those in. You have until March 31st to get those in, and you can email those to us at the lineup at athletics.com. We've probably got close to 50 submissions for the month of March already, and looking forward to putting those together for our next show. You can also start submitting clips for April on April 1st, as we'll have another top 10 for the month of April. Well, let's get right into it. We'll start with the first topic as a recap. And Aaron, you're not probably familiar with what we do here on this, being new to the program, but what we do is we kind of recognize a couple of teams that had good weekends from before. So we're going to start with, in the 10-year-old division, our number 24 team in the country is the Gulf Coast Edge. Mm-hmm. They had a great weekend. They went 5-0 in winning their 10-year-old division down south, and they ended up going outscored their opponents 22-4 in bracket play. Yeah, great weekend for those guys. So congratulations to the 10-year-old Gulf Coast Edge. Mm-hmm. And then number 7 in the 13-year-old division, the Motor City Hit Dogs out of Michigan. They traveled down south this weekend and won an event down there. They went 6-0 and give up 13 runs in their 6 games. So, it's pretty impressive for a team out of Michigan to travel down south and mix it up with the big boys this early on in the season. So congratulations to them, to the number 7, 13-year-old Motor City Hit Dogs. Well, let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
I mean, by now, everyone has seen the video from Texas a few weeks back where the coach shoves an umpire at the end of a game. And I was shocked and stunned. I would like to say it's unbelievable, but after doing some research and being in this game long enough, it's not as unbelievable as some might think.
Yeah, 100%. I think with me being a little bit younger and, not too far off of my playing days, I'm just kind of getting a feel of the other side of it. And the more that I'm at tournaments, the more I see, situations happen that, quite frankly, shouldn't be allowed or shouldn't be a thing.
Being at tournaments, and now you're starting to see that side of it and running tournaments. So that means you're there pretty much all day long.
All day long.
So that gives you more games to view, more games to see. As opposed, like you said, in your playing days, you're only there for a 2-hour slot and then you're gone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it is a difference, right? And so this is opening your eyes a little bit that you're seeing that end of it. And you had no idea that the depth and the level that it was out there, right?
Exactly. And one of the things that I did kind of before I started here was I was with the Louisville Bats, and being in the clubhouse and being able to watch those games, I picked up on a lot of stuff that managers and players would, the do's and don'ts of what you can say to an umpire. And, the biggest thing was, obviously, if you say the right words, you're gone. It's no question at that level.
But at that level, they know they're going to be gone.
Oh, yeah.
They know it.
They know it.
They go ahead and do it anyway, but they know the circumstances.
Exactly.
And the problem is, at the youth level, I don't know if they don't know, but I think they just don't care.
I think a lot of it is they just don't care. And what I've seen is, there will be, a missed call or whatever the case may be. And then it's like that. It's an immediate flip of the switch. Now every single thing is scrutinized. Everything is looked at. And if anything else happens, right there.
But at the older level, we'll even say high school, college. I don't include high school because I've seen some idiot coaches at high school. Yeah. Let's say college and pros. They understand that, there's another game tomorrow.
Exactly.
And there's another game after that.
Exactly.
And then the pros, there's 162 of them.
Yep.
And in college, there's 40 of them. And the same rules or the same mindset should apply at the youth level.
Yeah.
There's another game tomorrow, but it's not the case.
No, because
everybody thinks that game is
the game, and it's your
game.
And it's your first game of pool play in my tournaments versus Youth World Series. I know in TBS, if you get thrown out, you're not coming back. For the Youth World Series, if you get thrown out of any game, you can't be back the next day. So the mindset,
you're a lot stricter than TBS.
Oh,
TBS rules is you miss that game plus the next one. Then you can come back.
So you're suspended for the rest of that game, and then you miss the next one. But if the next one's tomorrow, you're not coming.
You're still
you're missing the next one.
Yours is the same thing. It's one game. Okay,
same thing. But the overall consensus is with the higher level stuff, they understand that there's another game tomorrow. But with the youth leagues, everybody is weekend to weekend, right? These guys in college and the pros, they're playing every single day.
Good point. So basically, their season is that weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good point.
And they go out and they try to win, obviously every single event. And if one thing goes wrong, well, it was the umpire's fault. The umpire missed that call or something along those lines.
So so it's safe to say that, and I never really looked at it this way, that basically on the youth level, their season is that weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So the calls are more glaring than the 45th game of our Major League Baseball schedule.
100%.
So
100%.
That's a great point and good outlook. I never looked at it that way.
And the thing
listen, hang on, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
It still doesn't give anybody any excuses, especially what we saw in that video.
100%.
I mean, the coach.
That is inexcusable for that.
No matter what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that video was pretty pretty blatant.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was an absolute ridiculous showing of not just as a coach, but as a mentor, as someone that these kids look up to. Because if the kids are over there and they're watching from the dugout and he shoves the umpire, well, they're watching him as, 2 weeks ago I looked up to that guy. Now you got a little bit of a moral dilemma.
Well, we're not going to talk. We're not going to name the coach. We're not going to name the organization.
100%.
I mean, the coach is already in enough trouble as it is.
Yeah.
Kudos to the organization that he coaches for because they let him go that night.
Very good.
They let him go that night. So I was glad to see that. I was glad to see that it stuck out.
Yep.
Hopefully that coach will learn a lesson from what he did, realize what he did wrong, and hopefully he doesn't become a repeat offender.
100%.
So I feel bad for the umpire who got put in that position. He looked like a younger
He
umpire.
looked like he was one of.
He thought he was probably trying to do the right thing, and he ends up getting assaulted for it.
100%. And guys like that are what we see a lot in E-Town when we go out there. It's younger guys that are just getting into the game that they played, but they want to still be around it, so they umpire. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that these younger guys, 22, 23, 24, are just getting berated.
We got an interview coming up later with the head umpire, the UIC, and the owner of the umpire organization, Rip Collings. He's going to come on here and he's going to talk about that incident, and he's going to have some advice for some young umpires on what to do, what not to do, some things on how to kind of handle the situation a little better, because it does get a little tedious out there if you're not familiar. And one of the things I can tell you from my perspective, and I've umpired for almost 30 years myself, is experience. You can't beat experience.
100%.
Knowing what to do, knowing what not to do. And that goes a long way. I can guarantee you that young umpire will never do what he did again. He will do, let me repeat this. I got to clarify this. He didn't do anything wrong.
No,
he didn't do anything wrong. But he will make better decisions to avoid those confrontations.
Oh, he will do everything he can not to be in that situation again.
As an umpire, you want to avoid confrontations.
100%.
So, as you get older, you learn better ways and better techniques to avoid those. So I just want to be clear on that. We don't think he did anything wrong.
No, Lord, no.
The coach was in the wrong about all of that. The thing with these umpires is people need to stand up for them. Whether it's us as tournament directors, umpire in chiefs, fans on their own team. But it's still not enough.
Nope.
Some of these states are passing laws now and passing rules that there's fines in association with acting out.
Yeah.
I found one on the internet in Minnesota. They will now hand out $1,000 fines for fans that act up in these games.
That's awesome.
And it says here, we'll get unruly youth sports fans under control.
Yeah.
My question to this, though, is what classifies as unruly?
I think that in the grand scheme of things, if you are so, in my opinion, there's 2 or 3 different kinds of ejections from an umpire or because of an unruly fan. If you're a fan and you're just you're sitting in your seat and you're chirping at them, and you get tossed for that, I don't think that's unruly. I think you obviously need to pipe down a little bit, but I don't think that's.
But
unruly.
hang on. Who makes that decision?
Good question. I think at that point, then that is going to be a tournament director decision or a umpire.
I like the fact that they're at least doing something. As you can see by the date, this just come through March 22nd of this year, just a few days ago.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they're doing something. I just don't know how they're going to determine if you and I get kicked out of a game and I get $1,000 fine and you don't. I'm going to be upset.
100%.
I'm going to be upset. So, but I appreciate there's at least something.
There's something there. I think there's something there to negate the overwhelming majority of parents just all going in at once.
It's got to be a deterrent. It's got to be a deterrent.
Number 2, I think what it does is it keeps people off the field, because in any case where there's an issue, the last thing you want as an umpire, tournament director, umpire in chief is for people to be on the field.
Yeah, you don't want to.
And I think that helps deter that a little bit. Saying if you get on this field,
that's gonna be $1,000.
You're getting $1,000.
If you assault someone, it's gonna be $1,000 fine.
And probably charges.
Yeah. And there's quite a few states that are taking similar roles against the umpires because it is a problem across.
Yeah.
National Federation of High Schools tell there's a stat out there that says there's 50,000 less umpires today across all sports, not just baseball, but across all sports. 50,000 less than there was in 2018, which was the last year that was not affected by the pandemic. That's a staggering number. 43 states have reported that they have less umpires today than they did in 2018. 43.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've noticed from talking to coaches and talking to different parents is on the flip side of that, kids are trying new sports. So you go through the pandemic, you go through 2 years of not doing any sports to being right back into school, and your son or daughter says, I want to play volleyball, I want to swim, I want to play softball or baseball, and I want to play basketball. Whereas they just played softball or baseball before the pandemic. And you get these new influx of parents that are new to the sport, they see something they don't like, and then it leads to something else.
Well, everything is a result of the parent feels, or the coach even feels, that their child is being wrong.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily the team.
No,
it's not necessarily the team.
And it's not the team.
You see parents questioning strike calls and safing out on their child.
Yeah.
And so these parents feel like you're attacking their child if you call them out on a bad third strike. And they just lose their mind over this. And they don't see the big picture. And umpires are getting tired of it. There's a video where an umpire walked off the field.
He's getting berated.
After getting berated by these fans. And he told them, and we've got we don't have the clip, but we've got a slide of it here. He told them, stop.
Yeah.
I've had enough. I let you say your piece, but this has been going on for 3 innings.
Yeah.
And at some point, I got to tell you to stop. And that point is right now.
And did you, I assume you've seen the video, what the parents have said?
Yes.
What the parents said?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that, to go after.
It was a personal attack.
It was a personal thing.
Now, I mean, the first 3 innings probably was not personal.
It was not personal
at all.
It was all
about calls.
But when he said stop is when they got personal.
They got personal.
Yeah. And in no way, shape, or form in any sport that you play is that right. So while I was at the bats and watching some of these games, the one thing you do not say to professional umpires is you say you're bad, your zone is not good, whatever the case may be. You always leave it very vague, because if you go after them personally, they'll look at you and just run you immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as you say your or
And
their
these-
first name or whatever,
These fans
You're
got
done.
personal, and
Yep.
he just said, "I'm done," and he walked off.
I don't blame him.
And that has been something that has happened all across the country. Again, not just in baseball, basketball, football, soccer.
Yep.
Um,
Every
all-
single sport
all
we are
of these,
losing.
all of these sports, like soccer. We got another slide here to show you. A soccer official back in 2015 got shoved by a player who got red carded.
Yeah.
Got shoved by a player, fell to the ground, hit his head, and he died from his injuries. And the guy that shoved him got 8 to 15 years.
I mean,
For a shove.
Yeah.
Was it really worth it?
No.
Was that red card really worth it?
It's never worth it. Obviously, it's never worth it. But in the moment, some of these parents, some of these coaches, even some of these players, they get so one-sided, and you have wronged me and me personally.
Me.
So
right.
me is going to
Not
take
about
it
the
out
team.
on you.
You didn't.
You wronged
take it away
me.
from my team. You wronged.
Yeah. You wronged
me.
Yeah.
And then we got another one here. It's just so it's in all sports.
Yeah.
Junior hockey player gets lifetime ban for punching a referee. Again, this just happened February 21st of 2022. The hockey player punched a referee.
And I think another aspect to this is if it's players doing it, I think that not that they're learning it from somewhere, this behavior from somewhere, but the kid has to be held liable for some of this stuff, right? So in this instance, for example, kid punches the ref. What is his after the fact? What are the repercussions of that? What led to that as far as before the game, stuff like that? That said, what was going through his mind? I'm going to punch this guy.
Yeah,
because it had to be going through your head just to be able to just go up and hit him like that. There's no split second reaction. Oh, you call them whatever in hockey.
Well, we're gonna get into this more detail with Rip Collins, and so right now we're gonna break away. We're gonna join the Rip Collins and do the interview with him, and then we'll come back and talk about this in just a little bit.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Rick Goff with Travel Ball Select and the lineup here. Joined by Rip Collins, the owner of Heartland Umpires, who assigns all the umpires down at the Elizabethtown Sports Park. First of all, Rip, I want to thank you for sitting in today and joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's get right into it. The reason you're here. I'm sure you've seen the video. Most of America has seen this video by now of an incident that took place in Texas last week of an umpire that was being shoved by a coach. Right off the top, Rip, give us your thoughts on what you saw in that video.
Well, basically, I think one of the problems with these situations, when you watch the video, you don't know all the parameters that happen, but there's not automatically time called in a ball game, especially when you start getting into travel ball tournaments, high school, college. That ball is live unless the umpire raises his hand and calls time. So what happened is the offensive team felt they had an advantage because the defensive team wasn't paying attention. The kid scored. It was a bang play at home. And from that, it snowballed. I think probably the one mistake that was made, I can't tell you for sure with the angle I saw whether he was safe or out. But the one thing that I would suggest to all umpires, especially new umpires, is once the game ends, you walk out through the winning team's dugout. It's the path of least restriction. The other thing is the partner, if he would have just walked a little faster instead of trying to find the baseball, that might have helped alleviate some of the stress as well. Because my partner, if I make a bang call, my partner should be the one who tries to be the buffer between myself and the coach. And that's the advice I would give. But I try to tell our guys all the time, there's nothing worse than trying to find that $4 or $5 baseball at the end of the game and put yourself in a position for this to happen. Get off the field. If there is a question of a rule, then you let things calm down. You don't leave the field until you have ruled on the ruling or made a ruling on the rule, But get off the field as soon as possible if it's just a bang bang play that ends a game.
A couple of things I want to touch on. In the beginning, you talked about you don't know what led up to that because we didn't have the whole video. But does it really matter? I mean, does it really matter? I mean, I understand coaches get upset every day in every game. The end result, and we posted the video link on our Facebook page, and then a couple of people started saying that, well, what if, or the umpire did this. Does it really matter? You don't lay your hands on an umpire. And no matter what he did or said, and unless he assaults you first, but that's clearly not the case in the video. And I know that was brought up on the Facebook posts a lot, and I want you to clarify that you really don't care what happened. He should never have touched the umpire.
Right. I didn't. If I made that point, I'm sorry. That isn't what I was trying to lead into. There is not ever a situation where an umpire should ever be touched by a coach, parent, player. In fact, in the state of Kentucky, it is a felony if you put your hands on an official umpire.
And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Rip, because that is becoming enacted more and more across the country. I know one of the places that I found online was in Minnesota, that it's $1,000 fine if you are unruly towards officials and do something that they deem as being misbehaved. So I applaud the states for trying to go that extra step, but then my question is, how many times, to your knowledge, has that been followed through with?
Well, I can tell you that it's probably been about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a Little League district tournament game in Nelson County, Kentucky. And at the end of the game, one of my umpires, who was very young and didn't know any better, he got in the line to shake hands because it was Little League and it's all about sportsmanship.
Yeah,
And
understood.
so as he's walking through, one of the coaches from North Odom here in Kentucky grabbed his hand and took his elbow and almost knocked the breath out of him. And it was in the handshake line, so it wasn't a real big deal. And so afterwards, the umpire called me. We called the sheriff's department. We tried to get the sheriff's department out there before it happened, or before the coach left. And we did not get out there in time, and the coach got home. Well, as we did some research and found his name, and we were going to pursue what we needed to pursue because we had witnesses that it happened.
Yeah.
Come to find out, he is a college football referee.
He's actually an official.
He is an official, and he was a major conference.
Oh, my
referee.
goodness.
And so the conference office kind of pushed my young man to back off, and he backed off because he's 18 years old, he's scared, and
Yeah.
I tried to get him to keep the pursuit up, but he finally backed down. And
See, and that kind of brings up my point, is like, you wonder how much, once everybody walks away, we all know this, right? Once everybody walks away from a confrontation, I won't even say 2 hours later, you're talking about 15 minutes later, they probably calm down. They probably realize, I was over the top, but by that time it's too late. And so I wonder if that leads, Rip, to a lot of these states not enforcing this, because by the time, like you said, by the time they get involved is hours later, everybody's calmed down, and the police really sometimes don't want to go through the hassle. All right. But I've got a couple instances I want to talk, and we're going to get back on some things you said earlier, but there was a case in Iowa, I believe. I'm not sure here. Let me look at my notes real quick. Where was this at? Yeah, it was somewhere. I can't remember. I'll get it to it just a minute. That a soccer ref was actually pushed and shoved down. I want to say this was in Iowa. Got pushed and shoved down, and he actually died from his injuries. Died from his injuries, and of course, they held him for manslaughter, and the guy got 8 to 13 years because he shoved an official. And so, we don't want it to come to that. So we really need the police to step in and do something, whether it's a fine or community service, something to kind of deter this, because it's not happening. People are doing it week in, week out, everywhere, and all sports across the board. I've got a couple of incidents this year. Like I told you earlier, a mayor in a town called Cloverdale got ejected. But then you take a look at what happens with our supposed leaders. And Juwan Howard from the University of Michigan a few weeks ago in the NCAA tournament or the Big Ten tournament smacked the coach from Wisconsin, guard. Well, I won't say nothing happened, but he got suspended for 5 games. You know, did that deter him from doing it again? I mean, I just don't understand. I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know if it will ever. If I think he will probably think twice before he would do it again. But the problem is the perception across the country that, oh, that's not that big a deal. What his punishment was. So now they feel like they can do it.
Right.
I think things like that it's just a snowball effect.
And
that's the problem.
Absolutely. You know, take a case in point last night at the Oscars. Will Smith, in front of a live television audience, smacks Chris Rock. And do you know what happened to him?
He won. He
won an Oscar.
He won an Oscar.
He won an Oscar. Yeah. And I saw this morning that they had a comment about the police report, and Chris Rock neglected to press charges, so it just got dropped. Mm-hmm. So he got away with it. So everybody in America's seen that. So now these guys are thinking, well, hey, you know what? If Will Smith can get away with it, I can get away with it. Right. It just perpetuates, and it just goes and goes and goes. You know, another thing I want to talk to you about, Rip, was a comment that you made about your partner. And it's really a great thing to bring up, that your partner needs to be aware of the situation as well. He needs to recognize that there might be some problems. And if you have a younger umpire that you might have an experienced guy with, he needs to kind of step in and lead the young umpire and say, hey, you know, this is what we do. Don't go talk to him. But what do you say to the umpire who says, well, the coach wanted to talk to me anyway? What do you tell your younger umpires?
So I'll go into how I used to handle things. If I was behind the plate and there was a bang bang or a rule interpretation, something out that happened out with my partner, and the coach was coming out to argue or ask a question, I always intercept.
But that's from experience, Rip.
Right.
That's from
so
these younger guys don't have that.
But that's the problem is our senior umpires have to recognize they're with younger umpires. And I think a lot of times it's the mentality of, well, that wasn't my call. I didn't make that call. So I don't want to get in the middle of that.
But don't you find, though, in assigning umpires, and I've been doing this 20 years, so I have a lot of interaction with umpires. Don't you find that the senior umpires really don't want to work with the younger guys, though?
It happens some. I've got a lot of guys that don't mind and will, they want to help and they want to mentor. But yes,
so then
it's a smoother game if I've got
two
a guy
seniors
with 20 years and another guy with 20. I'm going to pick,
Okay, great.
Right.
You just said it's a smoother game with a 20-year guy and a 20-year guy.
Right.
How much does the game change with a 1-year guy and a 2-year guy on the same team?
Oh, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And the way our umpire situation is today, that situation is happening more and more. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Because there's a umpire shortage. Everybody knows that. I don't even say an umpire shortage. It's an official shortage. It's an official shortage. I got a stat for you, Rip. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I looked this up. The National Federation of High School Officials, they have 50,000 less officials today than they did in the 2018-2019 year, which was the last year that was not affected by the pandemic. 50,000. Now, that's officials across all sports. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot.
I was going to say, I'd say the KHSAA here in Kentucky has probably in the last 5 years dropped 20%, but it may be higher. That's just a guess.
And
travel balls played some of that.
And here's what's happening is officials are getting less and events are increasing. So we're kind of cannibalizing ourselves here because we're lost officials. We've got more events, which means officials. When I broke into umpiring almost 30 years ago, and I think I told you this story at the E-Town Park one day, it took me 5 years. 5 years. Back in the day, that's the way it was because we had enough officials. It took me 5 years just to get a JV game. JV high school game. It took me another year to get a varsity game. Today, they're throwing first-year umpires on varsity games.
Yeah. One of my senior guys called me today on the way up, and he has a game tonight, and it's a huge region game. His partner, it's his first year, and so that's what they're dealing with. The numbers is not great.
Let's be fair to the first-year guys. There's some first-year guys out there that are good that can handle this.
Absolutely,
they are
absolutely,
but they're the exception to the rule.
Right.
Most of them can't. And then they find themselves in a situation like there was in Texas here a few years ago or a few weeks ago. That young umpire just didn't know how to protect himself. He didn't know the do's and don'ts. Didn't have enough experience to avoid that situation. And we had that post up on our Facebook page, and there was a lot of comments from people saying it doesn't matter which. He should be free to go on any side of the dugout that he wants. And you know what? They're absolutely 100% correct. But unfortunately, that's not the way society is.
No.
You know, why would you want to, if you have a like you said in your comment, a path of least resistance, why wouldn't you take that path?
Right.
And now, let's be fair, let's be honest. Even if you go out the winning side, doesn't mean that you're not going to get confronted, right?
Absolutely.
I've been confronted going out the winning dugout. You know, even though they won, it's a call that happened back in the third inning, right? And that coach won't let it go. He won't forget it.
Right.
Now, for the record, the coach from that team was let go by the organization later that evening. They let him go. And so I applaud that. We're not going to mention organizations' names. We're not going to mention the coach's name. There's really no need to do that. All we need to know is that the organization did step up, because that was a question by a lot of people in the comments too. Oh, nothing will happen to him. He'll be back coaching tomorrow or next week. And in most cases, they're probably right. But in this scenario, it was caught on video. And that's another thing. Rip, if this happens 15 years ago, nobody outside of that area in Texas knows about it.
Absolutely.
And it probably goes away. But with social media, you can't get away with anything now.
Right.
You're gonna have to get away with it.
One of the things I tell our guys, and it'll happen more, probably 75-80% of the time, if a game is like tight, if it's going to come down to the last play, last pitch, they'll usually let me know early enough that I'm waiting at the field for them with a golf cart, and we get them out.
Yeah,
we get them out of there, and that's why I feel like my numbers stay pretty consistent. Is they know I'm going to support them, they know I'm going to do everything I can to protect them.
Well, we have a luxury at E-Town. Let's be honest, we have a luxury at E-Town because we do have the local police force that will come out there, that we bring them out to the park. And that does detour a lot of the things. But I think what happened here in Texas, this was an off-site location to where, probably an umpire in chief wasn't there. Security was not there. And that's where these guys think they can get away with this stuff. Because as you mentioned earlier, by the time you get around to it and get somebody out there, well, it's already gone and they're gone home and been gone. To where you go to these places, and I worked out at Lake Point Sports Complex in Georgia for a couple of years. It was the same way out there. They had security right on site. And listen, still doesn't stop the idiots. It's gonna happen. In the 2 years that I worked out at Lake Point, there was 2 people that got arrested out there. I know you and I experienced last year at the TBS Nationals. A gentleman got arrested out there because he threw a water bottle at the police gator. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he had got ejected from a game and just didn't let it go. And he uttered the words, "If I known it was a police gator, I want to throw him the water bottle."
That's exactly what he said.
Well, it's a little too late then.
When I took his wife down to meet the police officer to see where to go bail him out, she asked me, she said, they need more writing on those police vehicles. And I said, well, throwing a water bottle at somebody's not okay either way. I said, I don't know how you could justify this just because you didn't read the police on the front of the vehicle.
So to give you guys a little bit of background of what that was, at Elizabethtown, the police bring in their own gator. Instead of a golf cart, they have their own. And it's clearly marked. It says Elizabethtown Police Department on it. Probably not in very big letters, but how big can the letters be on that, right? And so his complaint was that the lettering needs to be bigger. So he knew not to throw the water bottle at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, these guys have some excuses. So Rip, how long have you been doing this?
I started umpiring when I was 18, and so I did high school. I coached high school baseball, but I've run this company for going on 13 years.
Okay, so safe to say that you've seen quite a few things in your time.
I've seen a lot.
Give me one or two examples of some coaching behaviors that you've seen that just kind of make you shake your head. Them being over the line or even assaulting someone. Have you ever seen somebody assault someone?
I have not. I did a college baseball game one year when I first started umpiring. I was probably 20, 21. And a coach, he was from a college here in Kentucky, actually ran out because he thought the runner was out, picked up second base, took it to center field, and threw second base over the fence. We had to stop the game. Of course, he was ejected, and we had to fix the field before we could continue.
Well, probably back in those days, though, they didn't have extra bases sitting around, so you probably had to go over the fence to get it, didn't you?
Yeah, somebody had to
somebody had to go get it. Wasn't you, but somebody had to go get it.
Somebody had to go get the base.
Somebody had to go get it. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. In high school, I don't know how many years I did high school baseball, and then high school softball for 12 years. I have never thrown out a coach, a head coach, assistant coach for a team. Now, I've thrown out some parents, and I've had to eject some players for unsportsmanship.
Okay, let me interrupt you right there. So you've ejected parents, right, out of the game. How does that work? I mean, because parents are not going to leave, right? They're not going to leave. And you can threaten to forfeit the team, but you really can't, can you? I mean, you can't you have to get somebody to get them out of there.
In Kentucky, the KHSAA has guidelines. And so when you get to a point where that has to happen, you're supposed to go to home team, their administration, which in high school baseball and softball, you're not always going to have ADs or principals. But at that point, the head coach is in charge.
Yeah. And
so I just tell them they got to go. And usually it was for calling my partner a cheater, or it was bad behavior.
There you go. So we all know, we've all been to games, regardless of what sports, and people get on the referees. We as referees know that's part of the game. We expect that, right? We expect them to get honest because they're always not going to be happy with our calls. But there's a line.
Right? As long as it's not personal.
So a fan tells you, "Hey, ref, you're horrible."
You hear that every night.
You hear that every night, right? Yeah. Hey, ref, you're cheating my boys.
Yeah, that's
personal.
That's a deal breaker right there.
Right, because now you're implying that I have an outcome of this game.
Right.
In all the games you refereed in your time, how many times did you care who won the game?
Never.
Zero, right?
Never got up in the morning and put my uniform on and said, I'm going to make sure this team wins.
And that's one of the things that I hear in my time as an umpire and even tournament directing, is I hear this from the fans all the time. Oh, you're playing favorites for this team or that team or whatever. And I tell these guys don't care who wins. They don't care who wins.
No.
So, the fans can voice their opinion. They can, as long as they do it, I don't even say in a respectful manner, because it's not really respectful, but in a manner that don't cross the line. And it's just part of the game.
I think part of this too is the amount of money that it costs, because we've had to raise our money, our pay for umpires, which is kind of the trickle down, and the gates more, the entry fees more, the field rental is a lot more than it has been. And what happens is these parents are paying $10 a piece to walk in to watch their son or daughter play. And it's in a sense that we live in a sense of entitlement society.
So they think it gives them a right to say whatever they want. How many times have you heard, I've got free speech?
Oh, a lot.
You hear that a lot, don't you?
I paid to get in. I can say whatever I want.
Well, And I tell them all the time when it gets to my attention, you do have the right to be unhappy, but it does not give you the right to abuse. And there's a difference. There's a difference between abusing and there's a difference between just being an unhappy fan who has something to say, right? There's a difference. Exactly. And that's the problem is these folks don't know what that difference is. And I don't think they really care. And if people are not willing to throw them out, like my rule in Elizabethtown at my events, when you get thrown out, you got to go to the parking lot. You're not staying in the park. You're going to go out to the parking lot. And tournament directors and coaches and all that stuff, they need to understand that. They need to do more of that and make people more accountable for what they do. Right. And I think that will help everybody in the long run.
I think my favorite event during your tournament last year is the third pitch of the game, and the coach from one of the teams yells out to the umpire, "That's effing ridiculous. You got to get consistent."
See, right there, that's an immediate objection right there.
Yeah. And what had happened was you may remember we had to make some changes with some umpires. And so this guy was filling in and he was like, I really didn't want to eject him on the third pitch of the game, but looking back, I should have.
He should have. Yeah, he should have ejected him. Now, again, if he wants to complain at the third pitch of the game, he can do that without using the F word.
Right.
And, he can, and listen, we all know you're not supposed to argue balls and strikes, right? We all know that. But if a coach thinks he's getting squeezed, he can voice his opinion in a way that lets you know that he's not happy, but not make an ass of himself.
That's right. And we're talking kids. It's not acceptable to drop the F-bomb around kids.
No.
It's just not acceptable.
The one that cased me, this happened at Lake Point a few years ago. I'll tell you a quick story, was the coach had got into it with the umpire, and the umpire did use a swear word. And the coach is like, "Oh, he can't swear at me. Oh my God, it was the end of the world. He needs to go. He swore at me." Well, we have him on video. Lake Point has a state-of-the-art video equipment. We have him the 2 games prior just dropping F-bombs for 2 straight games. And now all of a sudden he wants to be holier than thou when umpire, and it wasn't one of the 7 forbidden words from George Carlin. It was a minor one. Yeah. It was a minor one. And all of a sudden he wants to make an issue about it. It's a problem as well too.
It is.
I've got a friend of mine that umpires in the Southeast, and he didn't want to be named in this interview, but he sent me a text, and it really hit home, Rip. And he sent me a text. He said, "I umpired a baseball game tonight, and honestly, for the first time ever in my 13 years of umpiring, I'm not sure if it's worth it anymore." And he goes on to say, "It wasn't my best game, but at the same time, I don't need this crap."
I lost 3 last summer right after your tournament.
Yeah.
Said they would never do it again.
And that's a problem. That is over the top.
Yes, it is.
Again, that fine line. You can be unhappy, but don't take it over the top. It's just doesn't make the game fun for anyone. And what's that say to the kids? Now we're seeing it that the kids are getting involved, drawing lines in the sand, turn around telling the umpire that was a horrible call.
All right.
And it just goes on from there. There was a case just last month in the Dominican Republic, down there in their professional league. The player didn't agree with a strike call. He took the bat and struck the umpire with a full swing. And it wasn't even strike 3. It was just one strike that he didn't agree with. And he took a bat and he swung out at the umpire. So, those types of things are just frustrating. It's bad look for the sport. It's bad for all of us because we need umpires. Listen, I got news for you. You can't play the games. You don't have umpires. Right. So if you're going to continue to treat them like crap, then don't complain when you show up to your field and you have one umpire.
And they will.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah, they will.
I've got friends all across the country that text me and email me, "Hey, we have one umpire in our game today." And I'm like, well, no, there's no one to blame but the fans and the coaches themselves.
I've got two people in Branson, Missouri have reached out to me trying to get me to send umpires this weekend because they can't get enough.
I have parents and coaches ask me all the time this generic question. And they say, Rick, well, what are we supposed to do when the umpires make a bad call? What are we supposed to do? My response to them is act like an adult. Act like an adult. There's a right way and a wrong way to handle that. Act like an adult. And 90% of the time they look at me like I've got three heads because they don't know what to say. You know, they want me to tell them how to argue. That's what they were looking for, right? That they wanted me to give them permission to argue a certain way.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to do that. Act like an adult, whatever that may be.
Be a role model.
Be a role model. Act like an adult. And that's not the answer they're looking for. So they have no response. You know, they have no response. You know, it's a situation. This was an unfortunate incident that took place in Texas. Hopefully, the young man learned some things. You grow from it. Every mistake that happens, you grow from it. Hopefully, that coach grows from his mistake. Hopefully, the umpire grows and he now knows walk out the winning side. I don't care what people say. They're saying they shouldn't have to. I'm telling you, as an umpire, as a guy who used to train umpires, that's just advice. You don't have to do it. You can walk wherever you want. It is a free country. But you know what? Had that umpire walked to the other side, you know, and I'm not blaming him, but that probably doesn't happen. Or it might. Maybe he follows him out to the parking lot. We've all had that happen too.
And see, here's the part of the video we don't know. The head coach, it looks like the head coach came down first. And if he called him over to ask him a question, then the umpire may not have been heading out that dugout. He may have just been going over to answer a question.
Let me be clear. The guy that pushed the umpire was not the head coach.
Right.
He was an assistant coach. So I don't want that gentleman to be tagged as the head coach, and maybe the head coach takes some grief for this. It was an assistant coach that was.
And you can kind of tell that from the video, by the way the actions were. But I hope the young man doesn't quit. I hope he stays with it. You know, I really and truly hate to see anybody get quit the game over something like that.
It kind of brings up a good point, Rip, is kudos to the young man for not responding. He got up, he turned around, he walked the other way. I'm going to tell you, I've got a lot of friends in the umpire industry that would have not done that.
Absolutely.
There would have been issues bigger than what we saw in that video.
I have a lot works for me that would not
have
walked away.
And you know what? Can you blame them?
No, I can't.
At that point,
I hope
they
won't. But
I hope they won't either. But at least you're like, you know what? The guy had it coming. Yeah. You know, you can argue a claim for self-defense in that case, for sure. Right. You know, so kudos to the young man for walking away, you know, being the bigger man. And it shows on social media with everything that goes on, you know, the coach is just taking absolute abuse, which I think in turn enforced the organization to let him go.
If the young man is ever in this area and wants to umpire, just reach out and call me. I would take him in a heartbeat.
We've reached out trying to find out who it is. We've been unsuccessful trying to locate the man, but if I do, I will pass that along to him and let him know that he's welcome to umpire up here in Kentucky at any time. Well, Rip, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us, giving your insight, giving your advice and your opinions on some things for some young umpires to do to kind of further and prolong their career. Because we need them. One last stat I'm going to give you on the way out here is the National Associations of Sport Officials say that 70% of all umpires, new umpires, will quit within the first 3 years.
I believe that.
And it's because of the abuse that they take. So hopefully everyone here is on their best behavior when they go to these games. And if you see someone acting up and being a fool or being an idiot, you need to call them out and let them know that it's not acceptable. Whether it's your team or somebody else's team, preferably somebody on their own team will do it because it has more of an impact than somebody from another team. Another team does it, it kind of creates a confrontation. So don't be afraid to call these guys out and hold them accountable for what they do. So I'm Rick Goff. This is Rip Collings. I want to thank you for joining us again. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right. All right, welcome back to the lineup. We're coming to you from the Louisville studios here, athletic studios here in Louisville, Kentucky. Man, what a great and insightful interview with Rip Collings and a great perspective that he had on all of this that took place.
He's been doing it, you know, he said he's been doing it forever. I've worked with him the past couple years. He's one of the best. in every tournament that we go to or that I go to for the Youth World Series, when in doubt, I call Rip.
He relates to the umpires very well. They respect him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always good to see.
Yeah.
He's always on site, so if there's a problem
Yep.
that does arise,
He's
he's
got
there to address it.
He's got a great group of umpires.
Yeah,
All of his
and
UICs are
So
outstanding guys.
he made a lot of good comments about that. So I want to thank Rip for
Yeah.
joining us, man. That was great. All right, let's get on to our next topic here. Do we really want silver brackets in youth baseball? And this one's one that comes up quite a bit in our travels. I've been running tournaments for almost 20 years, and 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a silver bracket.
Mm-hmm.
You entered a tournament, you went there to try to win, and if you didn't win, you went home.
Exactly.
That's not the way it is today.
No. Kind of going into that a little bit. Do I like the silver bracket from a overall experience of the tournament, mindset? Yes, absolutely love it. Do I love it as a player? Back when I played, no. I wanted to win the top one. I wanted to be there at the end with the gold bracket and being number one in that bracket. But from an experience mindset from parents and coaches and players, I think the silver bracket's awesome.
There is just like anything in life, there's a need for it under certain circumstances.
Yes, 100%.
And I do agree with that, because it does get kids the opportunity to play more games, get more reps. So that is a good thing. The biggest problem that I have with the silver bracket, and everybody else probably in America that has it, let's be hypothetical here. You've got 20 teams in your tournament. So you decided, I'm going to take 10 to the gold bracket. I'm going to take 10 to the silver bracket. And they both play out. And then the silver bracket, they give them, quote unquote, championship rings because they won the silver bracket. But in that scenario, technically, what place did that team finish out of 20 teams?
Technically, they finished 11th.
Technically, they finished 11th.
Yes.
That is correct. You've got the first and second place teams in the gold bracket that got rings. Then the third through 10th place didn't get anything. They technically finished higher in the tournament than the 11th place team who got rings.
Yeah.
So why are we rewarding the 11th place team but not the third through the 10th?
Because I think that the experience of every team in there obviously is coming in looking to win the gold bracket, right? And we have 20 teams, and if you put all of those 20 teams in the gold bracket, the likelihood of everybody having the best experience possible at the tournaments isn't likely. If you split it up,
so we're catering. Yeah, we're catering to mediocrity.
I don't, not the word mediocrity, but I think we're catering to the general masses of parents and coaches that just want to, for the Youth World Series, a lot of these teams come down for the best experience possible. They're not coming down there to, throw it out there and let's just get on ESPN.
But most people say if you want a better experience, then win more games, then you'll have a better experience.
But some of these teams that come to the Youth World Series, I'm going to use this one. So we split up our brackets between D2 and D3, right? Some of these D3 teams, I'm sorry, they just couldn't compete with D2.
Sure, I understand.
So we try to separate that as best we can. But at the end of the day, like I said, we try to, reward everybody with a good experience. And yes, the gold bracket is reserved obviously for the best teams, and then the ones under that are not rewarded at all with that experience. But
it can happen to any team. They can come to any World Series, whether it's TBS, whether it's the Youth World Series, and they can start out the week and go 5-0, right? And then they get to that first bracket game and lose, and their week's over. How good of an experience do you think they had? Because they lost their first game.
They lost their first game.
And they're only going to remember that. They're not going to remember that they went 5-0.
100%.
They're only going to remember that. So it is... I understand what you're saying, and it's great that we try to give them a best experience, but we can only do so much.
Exactly.
We can only do so much. We can only control their experience so much. They have to control it themselves.
Yeah.
And let me give you a quick story of what happened at TBS National. This happened 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a gold and silver in the TBS bracket.
Mm-hmm.
I do that because they're spending a lot of money to get in there. I want them to have a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
But in the gold championship bracket, I didn't call it gold and silver. I call it championship bracket and consolation bracket.
Mm-hmm.
In the championship bracket, the winners get personalized engraved rings for
Mm-hmm.
winning the tournament.
Yeah.
All right. In the consolation bracket, I handed out medals
Mm-hmm.
to the teams that won
Mm-hmm.
the consolation bracket.
Yeah.
2 parents from this team that won
Mm-hmm.
come up to me and wanted to know where their rings were. They won the consolation bracket. And I informed them that rings only went to winners of the gold bracket,
Mm-hmm.
that the consolation bracket we're giving, despite what I really personally believe, we still give them medals
Mm-hmm.
for winning that
Mm-hmm.
separate bracket. And they looked at me and they told me they'd never be back because they spent all this money to win medals.
Mm-hmm.
And that just blew my mind and caught me off guard. I just didn't know what to say to that.
Yeah, and then the way the Youth World Series differentiates it is your gold bracket, you'll have, so your medal will be a little bit different than your silver bracket. And even in some cases, we'll even have a bronze bracket in some cases with the amount of teams that we're having this year. But the awards down the line are all pretty similar, but the medal is the biggest thing. That's the differentiating between the two. But when it comes to should they get the same awards, personally, I think they should. Just like I'm going to keep harping on it. Those teams 1 through 8, 6 of them didn't have the what it took to win that particular bracket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Down below, if you have another 10 teams in there, 2 of them won. They still had to play the same 8 teams. Granted, they didn't have the records in pool play that they wanted, but they still went through the same bracket style as the team.
But how do you explain to the 6th place team that comes up to you, and I've had this happen to
Mm-hmm.
me, and said, we finished higher than they did, and
Mm-hmm.
you rewarded them for losing.
Mm-hmm.
So what was our incentive? I mean, why don't we get something? We finished 6th. They finished 11th.
Well, I in all honesty,
So how do you answer that?
I would look at them and say, well, you guys made the gold bracket. You made the best bracket that we offer. They are in the lower bracket.
But we didn't go home with no hardware. You gave hardware to a lower place team who lost more than we did.
And I'm sorry, but that's a consequence of being in the gold bracket. You got to win out. If you're the 6th seed in the gold bracket, that's pretty dang good. If you're the 12th seed in the silver bracket, I mean,
but the 12th seed in the silver bracket won, and they got rings and trophies and pictures and banners, and we finished higher than they did. They went 1-4 in pool play. We went 4-1,
mm-hmm.
and we got nothing.
Well, would you rather?
Nothing.
Would you? Then I would pose the question: would you rather been in the gold bracket and competed for the gold championship, or would you rather be down in the silver and
if they didn't win the gold bracket, I bet you most of them would say, "Well, we should have won to the silver and won that."
Well, I mean, at that point,
my point is, you're
yes.
not going to make everybody happy.
No, 100%.
They're going to ask you why, repeatedly.
Uh-huh.
Again, 20 years when I broke into this business with my son. My son's 28 years old now,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell him he came over for Christmas, and we started talking about his travels in youth baseball, and I brought up the silver and gold brackets, and he's like, "Dad, what is that?" And I explained it to him. And he goes, "Are you kidding me?"
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "We never had that." And he played from the time he was 8 all the way through his 16.
Yeah.
He goes, "We never had that. It's either you won or you went home."
Mm-hmm.
And he was floored that this even existed now.
And I think it's a a change in perspective across all sports as well. From however many years ago when he played to when I played to now the kids that are playing now, parents have changed, coaches have changed. Everything has kind of changed over to be more inclusive and to crown more people as champions, whether it's the gold bracket or the
But
silver
I see it. I see it at the park. Teams are excited when they make the silver bracket.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, if we
now we just dodged a bullet from those gold brackets.
They took the top 10. We finished 11th.
Mm-hmm.
we're glad that we didn't make the gold bracket because we were going to get killed, or
Well-
their mindset is different.
Well, then that's
so the teams are actually happy that they go to quote unquote the silver bracket. To me, that's a problem.
Oh, it is.
It's a problem.
I think everybody should compete to be at the top spot in any tournament that you go to. I think you're doing a disservice to your players and to your parents and fans that are there by in pool play. Well, we want to be in the silver bracket so we can just go get medals. I think that's a disservice.
Then
to
me,
there.
they should pick their tournaments better. And I have this conversation with coaches all the time. They ask me, Rick, what's some of the better tournaments that I can play in across the country?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's a tournament that fits for me? I'm not a major team. I'm a AAA team. You've done this long enough. What's some tournaments that will fit me? And I give them the same answer all the time. You find a tournament where you can play a 5-4 ball game.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you want to play.
Yeah.
So when these AA or AAA teams, and this is on the tournament directors too, they have these open tournaments where everybody can get in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you see major teams are in there.
Yeah.
As soon as these AA and AAA teams stop signing up for these major events
Mm-hmm.
and demand that they have, like the Youth World Series,
Yeah.
no major teams are allowed in that.
Mm-hmm.
Once they start doing that on a week in and week out basis, I think everybody's going to be better off.
I think so as well.
Because they go in there and they get 60 teams in the open division.
Yep. And then
They're not all majors.
And then these AA teams that go in there, they just go in there and get absolutely shelled. And it's not good for anybody. And
But they're okay with that because they know they're going to drop down into the silver bracket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they're going to play their own tournament with teams that are like skilled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, with the open style tournament, I think pool play does a great job of differentiating between, hey, this is a AA team and they played a major team, or this is a major team. And
The Youth World Series does a great job with that. So if you guys are out there and you're a AA, AAA team looking for something that's going to be competitive all the way around, check out the Youth World Series. There's no major teams that are allowed in this thing. And so at least you have competitive games, game in and game out. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. It's been a great informational show. Man, I want to thank you for joining us again. Don't forget to tune in. In 2 weeks, we will reveal our top plays of March. Aaron and I are looking forward to getting those to you guys. We're excited about it. But for now, we're signing off from the Athletic Sports Group Studios here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm Rick Goff. This is Aaron Smith, your host for this evening. Thank you. Good night. We'll see you in 2 weeks.